Hello and welcome to Asase Ba, a podcast that honors oral tradition and shines light on Ghanaian stories that are often untold or silenced. I'm your host, Michelle, and my pronouns are she and her. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the season finale of Asase Ba Season 3. Wow, okay. So yeah, I am so proud of this season. The way that this show has grown and evolved, and the way that this season came together in terms of the different topics that were covered and discussed. I'm so proud. I'm so proud of this season so much. And, I've mentioned in earlier episodes, I'm just happy that I showed more of myself, whether it's talking about myself personally, as I did in episode 1, or, focusing on a specific topic and doing solo episodes. I'm so proud of that. And also just the amazing guests that I had for this season. They were so passionate, knowledgeable, and I just had such a great time interviewing them. So this is the season finale of season 3 and leaving this season with good vibes. You know what I mean? I genuinely enjoyed this season. It was awesome. And it's been nice seeing the show grow and seeing the support that this show has had, especially this season. And I'm looking forward to, seeing that more as the show evolves, right? And speaking of support, I want to thank everyone who has been sharing this podcast this season, retweeting, sharing episode links, commenting on it, whether it's Instagram or Twitter. I thank everyone so much. And I also want to thank the people that have donated to the show. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I really appreciate your support. So there are 2 ways to support Asase Ba. The first way, as I mentioned before, is sharing the podcast. So sharing on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and the @ is Asase Ba Pod. You can support by retweeting on Twitter. You can support by sharing the link to an episode that really resonates with you. You can support by engaging. Is there an episode that you're really feeling? Do you have any thoughts, feedback? Write your comments, on Twitter, write it on Instagram, and you can hashtag Asase Ba Pod so that I can see it and other people can see it as well. And, you don't have to only do social media. You can also, tell your family, your friends to listen to the podcast. And speaking of social media, I forgot to mention, a lot of the older adults and the older folks are on WhatsApp. That's where they congregate. Share the link there, But yeah, it's all to say that sharing is a huge way to support Asase Ba. And I really see it. I really appreciate it whenever I see you guys sharing the podcast. Thank you so much. Another way to support the podcast is through monetary donations. Y'all know me. I'm the producer, the host, the editor, the doer of the things. In the future, I'd love to have, people help and that kind of stuff. But right now, it is me at the moment. So, I love doing this podcast. I love it, right? And I love getting into my creative bag to do this, and my producer hat, putting on my producer hat, and just really telling the stories or amplifying the experiences of Ghanaians and things that are often untold or silenced. But, it's also work to plan, produce, edit, and all that jazz. So if you want to support me as an indie creator, you can do so by donating via email transfer for those in Canada. If you're outside of Canada, you can donate via PayPal, And the email for both the email transfer and the PayPal is asasebapod@gmail.com. So that's ASASEBAPOD@gmail.com. Thank you guys so much for your support. I really appreciate it. So yeah, this is the season finale, the season 3 finale of Asase Ba. So before I get into this episode, I wanted to touch on something I discussed in season 3, episode 3. So if you go back and listen to that episode, I did a spotlight on what's going on in Ghana in terms of the Anti-LGBTQIA bill that's been proposed by a group of MPs. The bill has been proposed, so it's not been passed, and it's not law, right? It's proposed. So the bill is called the Promotion of Proper Human Sexual Rights and Ghanaian Family Values Bill. It's a very dangerous bill that would make being LGBTQIA or an ally illegal with up to 10 years in prison. It's horrendous. I read it and it's horrible. It goes against people's human rights, and it demands intersex people to undergo sexual reassignment surgery and also gay people to undergo conversion therapy. So yeah, this bill is terrible, and it really infringes on the rights and the agency of LGBTQIA people. So yeah, to learn more about like the bill and the things that I discussed surrounding the bill, go and listen to season 3, episode 3, and do your research as well as read the articles that I linked in the show notes to learn more. So I'm talking about this again because it's important and people need to pay attention, right? And specifically here in Canada, people in solidarity with queer Ghanaians back home have written an open letter to admonish this horrendous bill. And people have called on the Ghana president and consul general in Canada to make clear that the bill is harmful and opposed to the human rights of queer Ghanaians. So I've added the link to this open letter, which you can sign to show your support of LGBTQIA people in Ghana. I've left it in the show notes, the link. And for more information on this open letter and the actions being taken in Toronto specifically to stand in solidarity with queer people in Ghana, you can visit Queers for Ghana on Instagram, and that's 4 with the number 4. Queers for Ghana is a collective of queer Ghanaians and allies in Toronto. These links, so the link to the open letter as well as to the Instagram page for Queers for Ghana, will be in the show notes. So yeah, we really need to support LGBTQIA folks in Ghana and show that we stand by them, demonstrate our solidarity as Ghanaians in the diaspora, because we have certain privileges, especially people that are like citizens or residents here. We have certain privileges that queer folks in Ghana don't have, right? So we really need to use those privileges to voice our opposition of the bill and also show that we're not going to stand for this horrible, disgusting, hateful bill, and that we care and we see what these hateful groups are trying to do. I really encourage people to do your research and just learn and read about what's going on in Ghana and how this bill will gravely affect queer people living in Ghana and queer Ghanaian citizens as well. Okay, let's dive into today's episode. Okay, so today I'm talking about visions of the future, from my imagination as a Ghanaian, as a cultural worker, as someone who wants a better future, sees that we have the potential to transform the world into a better place. So it's from my imagination, my vision, and later on, you'll hear from a couple Ghanaians on their imagination of the future, their vision of the future. So I'm going to start with mine. And I'm someone, as I mentioned, season 3, episode 1, where I talked more about myself and like my interests and desires and values and beliefs. I talked about how I'm a creative person, and with creativity, you need a lot of imagination. And I'm someone that's always been very imaginative. You know, I love brainstorming ideas, thinking of new things, new ways of doing things. And I love me some Afrofuturism, you know, the aesthetics. And it's not only an aesthetic thing, it's a concept, an idea. And Afrofuturism, basically imagining ourselves as people of African descent in the future. And it just kind of gives us the opportunity to rethink how we can exist and live freely in the world. So I tweeted a few months ago on the Asase Ba, not even a few months ago, several months ago, probably in the spring or something. I tweeted on the Asase Ba Twitter page, what does it look like to use our imaginations to brainstorm new ideas and possibilities, alternate worlds and realities in collaboration with each other? And that's kind of like the thing that I think about a lot, and something that I want to see more of, us collaborating and discussing like our ideas, you know, with our communities and people we trust. So I want to think about and talk about, what are our visions of the future as Ghanaians in Ghana, as Ghanaians in the diaspora? Because I really think that thinking, imagination, imagining, brainstorming, it personally gives me hope. You know, it's like when you have hope and when you can imagine something different, it fuels me in a way, because it's like this work and all that stuff we're doing is not all in vain. The world can truly change, you know what I mean? And I feel like it's good for me to know that and see that and imagine that, so that I can just keep going on in the world, you know? Because we know that this current system, it doesn't work, and we need change. So brainstorming, get into my creative bag, using my imagination, it's good for me. It's really, really good. And I love seeing people discuss these things, you know, whether it's through art, music, film, books, etc. That's why I love this kind of stuff. You know, I truly believe that creativity, imagination, and brainstorming can truly transform society. And doing all this just makes me think alternatively beyond what I can currently see, hear, or touch, which is very important to me and my well-being. And I wrote about this, about my imagination, my Afrofuturist vision, several years ago, about 3 years ago. And I went back and read what I wrote, and a lot of these things still stand true. Now I would probably be a bit more specific, but the general idea, the general concept still ring true to me. So I'm going to talk about that a bit right now. So in my Afrofuturist world, in my vision of the future, self-care is the standard. We really prioritize looking after our well-being, whether emotional, mental, physical, and we have space to be able to do so. We have the resources to be able to do so. And self-care for me leads to being more intentional about building community and community care. We have this energy, once we care for ourselves and make sure that we are good, there's like this newfound energy to really explore ourselves and build intentional communities. And I want to highlight that we have the resource to do so, because I feel like that's often the barrier, that in the society that we live in, we often don't have the resources, or the structure that we live in makes it difficult to really pour into and care about our well-being, emotionally and mentally, and physically as well. So this then leads to us building intentional and active relationships, intentional communities based on a foundation of trust, communication, respect, love, compassion, reciprocity, accountability, and reflection. And, I've talked about community, intentional community, season 3, episode 1, so you can go back and check that out. Because we build intentional communities, we are also then able to understand that the way we move forward and grow and evolve in those communities is also doing self-reflection and looking at ourselves and how we can be better, etc. And then the way we also pour into these communities is by doing better for ourselves. And this is done through like state, communal resources. So it's like a relationship. They affect one another. And also within my Afrofuturist vision that I wrote about several years ago, that I still very much align with today, we have room to express and talk about our rage, our anger, our vulnerability, without fear of judgments. I know often there's this fear of being angry, talking about things that make us vulnerable because of like potential consequences of doing so. And we've seen that there are consequences in some cases of doing so. So in this vision, in my vision, there's space and room to do that. So I just think that's so important for growth and for new insights and learning. So next, my Afrofuturist vision in this imagination, in this new world, we make room for our forebears, our ancestors, and recognizing their contributions and holding space for their wisdom. So I'm someone that believes in ancestral veneration and really acknowledging and honoring our ancestors and the knowledge and the gifts and everything that they've provided us, the tools, and regularly communicating with them to ensure that we have the messages, we have the key, we have the tools to move forward in this life and to truly live this life. In my Afrofuturist vision, we understand the transient nature of self. We're not static beings. We're human. We continuously grow and evolve. And in this world, we all really understand that. We understand that about ourselves, and we understand that about each other. And we don't punish that. In this reimagination of the world, we're not confined by binary constructions of humanity that leave little room for exploration. Gone with rigidity that is harmful, because we see that in this world and society, a lot of people and the state in general, they push this kind of acceptable mode of being. And it's very binary and rigid, and there's no room to be other, express yourself in alternate ways that are not deemed acceptable by society. And in this reimagination, in my vision of the future, we're able to explore because we understand that humanity is not rigid, and there's so many nuances and layers to ourselves, and that's accepted, you know what I mean? We're not held to this kind of strict status quo where you're expected to align with certain societal norms and beliefs. We accept complexity in this vision of the future, in my vision of the future. And we dismantle harmful ideologies that are made to seem natural or normal. And these harmful ideologies, like in regards to sexuality, gender, modes of being, even the way that we interact with each other, capitalism, all of those kind of isms that really stifle ourselves and really makes living in this society difficult when you're not aligned with everything that society says you should be. And in this Afrofuturist vision, my vision of the future, it's not about replicating today's society. and as people of African descent, as Ghanaians, etc. It's not about replicating today's society and putting ourselves in the role of oppressors, because I know that's what a lot of people low-key, they don't really want liberation like that. They just want what the white man's got. You know what I mean? They just want to replace people that are at the top. That's what some people want low key, and actually high key. And I know it's because, like, oftentimes feeling this anger because, we're constantly feeling the effects and living the effects of this society. It's like, ooh, I can't wait until I want to fight this, because then I can't wait, till I am in this position, and then I can enact all the violence that these people at the top enacted towards me onto other people. And then it becomes this kind of shift of power dynamics where all the anger and the hurt and the pain that we deal with, that we feel, is then shifted onto people that are less privileged than us. And that's not right. I really believe in just creating a new world and liberation for all, and not just replicating today's society and just putting us as the oppressors. I don't believe in that. So yeah, this is my vision of the future, which I wrote several years ago, and I still align with these visions. And it might change, down the line. It might get more specific in certain ways. But yeah. So now I want to talk about the stuff that I often discuss on the podcast, or the stuff that are kind of the central theme of the podcast. So oral tradition, cultural work, queer identities. I also have visions of the future, and I want to get into that as well. So let's start with oral tradition. In the future, I really believe that, and I know that a lot of people are doing this as well, digitizing our oral history. We live in a digital age. And I mean, that exists in some ways. Like music, for instance, is an example of our oral tradition. If you listen to like some high life music, you'll hear a lot about like our cultures and traditions and all that kind of stuff. And music today as well embody that. So in that way, we do have that. But also just extending that, recording, and that's what I do with this podcast, right? I use this podcast as a medium to document and preserve our different stories, experiences, etc. And I just want more of that digitization of our oral history, our oral stories. I even imagine how we can use technology for that, How can we use virtual reality or augmented reality to make these stories come to life? Make it engaging, bring it to the future, bring it to the present. In this oral tradition, I also think about merging oral history and the written word. writing down our oral history so it's more accessible. We can use it as research resources. Speaking of research and resources, looking at oral history as a valid source of research. And in this vision, we don't only have to go to academic sources, which a lot of them are not even accessible. So in this vision, we don't have to just go to academic sources to study things about ourselves and our cultures. We have oral history as a valid form of research, and we can use that to learn more. And because it's also written, it's more accessible, right? I imagine having directories, repositories of oral histories. There are some that exist. I want more. I want it to become a norm where we can just go on a website, multiple websites, and look up something. Everything is archived, organized, and we can just look something up and use that as research to write our blog posts, to inform our YouTube videos, to even inform research that we're doing, or just for ourselves to be more knowledgeable about things that we're interested in. And also in this vision of the future in regards to oral tradition, I want us to look at folk tales, proverbs, music. I know a lot of us don't play about music, right? So looking at all those as valid forms of oral history, because they are. Okay, so now in regards to cultural work, that's really one of the central themes of this show. This show is a product of my cultural work, and it's also inspired by a lot of the cultural work that I see by griots, storytellers, archivists, curators. So, Asase Ba, I don't play about cultural work. I shout out cultural workers at least once a month. Go on Asase Ba Pod on Twitter, Instagram, etc. But in my vision of the future, there's more funding for work on Ghanaians in Canada and Ghanaian Canadians. And I know there are people that are already doing this work to discuss and document things about Ghanaian Canadians. But I feel like we need more support and we need funding, money outside of academia to be able to continue on with this work. Support is so important in the form of money as well, right? So there's support and sharing, liking, all that stuff, which is very important and very important to me for Asase Ba. But just in the future, in terms of like cultural work and giving people the tools to be able to do this sort of research and just talking to different people, funding is needed, right? And I think funding should be given to cultural work specifically within the margins. Those who are often relegated to the backgrounds, hidden or silenced. Those topics that are not quote unquote respectable. Funding should be given to people who are focusing on those topics as well. In my Afrofuturist vision in regards to cultural work, I also believe that we should honor and learn about cultural workers. Even before I expand on that, when I say more funding for work, I also include Ghanaians living in Ghana and Ghanaians across the diaspora. So it's a collective thing. But back to honoring and learning about cultural workers. We should, because it's so important to see these cultural workers and learn about their work and why they do the things they do, their inspiration, learn about their stories, learn about specifically the women, non-binary people, queer people that are doing this work, people that are in the margins that are doing this work. We can't just honor and acknowledge the people that are cishet men. I think that's very important. Also, we need physical spaces to discuss and showcase cultural work. Whether it be, I'm here in Canada here, that would be so nice to have a space where I can go to, other people can go to see our cultural works on display. And the internet is cute and all for these things, but there's something powerful about seeing cultural work in the physical realm, you know what I mean? And just absorbing it and engaging with it where you live. I love it. The times that I've seen that on display, I felt so nicely rooted. I felt like there were people here that I could connect with, resonate with. So yeah, I think we need these physical spaces for Ghanaian cultural work. And I'm sure there are Ghanaians who are living in Ghana that feel the same way as well. And another thing, I want to see more cultural groups here in Canada supporting cultural work that centers people in the margins. People in the margins that are not, quote unquote, respectable or adhere to respectability politics. I want to see more of that. And I also want to see cultural work aimed at for children, for elders, and for adults as well. Because the way that we approach the work is different depending on what kind of age group or generation you belong to. So I really want to see more of that. Okay, so now, you got my vision of the future as it pertains to cultural work. Now, this is my vision of the future as it pertains to queerness and queer identities. So I want to see the decriminalization of queerness in Ghana. Season 3, episode 3, I talked about what's going on in Ghana in terms of the Anti-LGBTQIA bill that is going through the rounds right now, and how harmful and violent it is. And just in general, the violence that queer people in Ghana face. So I want to see decriminalization of queerness in Ghana and laws that protect queer people, from discrimination, from harm, from violence. And there are a lot of Ghanaian organizations, queer organizations that talk about the things that they need and support and all of the stuff that they need in Ghana. So I strongly encourage you to follow them. So there's LGBT plus rights Ghana, Silent Majority Ghana, and Drama Queens. They support queer folks as well. So just check out those organizations. They're on social media. They have websites. I also want to see physical spaces for queer Ghanaians. You know, I recently watched the show Sex Education, which is on Netflix, and seeing Eric go to Nigeria. And like there's this underground club scene with all these queer Nigerians just, you know, in their element, dancing, being themselves, having fun. Like I want to see more of these spaces that are not hidden, that doesn't have to be hidden because, you know, it's not a crime. You know what I mean? So I want to see the decriminalization and laws that protect queer people, you know, give room to these spaces, these physical spaces here in Canada and also in Ghana and across the diaspora where queer people can just be, you know? And I also want to see funding for individuals or groups that support queerness. Money speaks, let's be real. So more funding, you know, for orgs, for culture work that center queerness. And I want to see more queer documentaries, histories, work, media that center queer Ghanaians. And I want to see this without people fearing for their lives or fearing consequences or retribution, especially our queer siblings in Ghana, where it's very dangerous to be queer out loud. So those are my visions of the future as it pertains to cultural work, oral tradition, queer identities. And now, let's hear from two other Ghanaians and their imaginations of the future, their visions of the future. First, you'll hear from Makafui, pronouns she, her, and Makafui is a writer on hiatus. She has folders full of half-written stories and a head that's forever in the clouds. One day when she's done creating content for others, she'll return to those stories and finally finish one. So you'll hear her recording about her vision of the future. And after that, you'll hear from Amma Gyamfowa on her vision of the future. And Amma, pronouns she, her, is a Ghanaian Canadian womanist therapist and social worker engaged in the field of social work for the last 8 years. Her work has been rooted in supporting Black women, trans and non-binary youth, and survivors of gender-based violence. With a demonstrated history of meaningful engagement in community development, she has cultivated and advanced diverse programs and initiatives across the Greater Toronto Area. Amma is the founder of Womanist Healing Counseling Services, prioritizing mental health counseling and therapeutic supports through a holistic African diasporic lens to healing, mental wellness, and liberation. So yes, you'll hear from, before I say that, Amma was actually a guest on Asase Ba for season 1, episode 4, and she came on to talk about mental health. So go check out that episode as well. Yeah, so you'll hear from Makafui and then you'll hear Amma's recording. Here we go.
Sometimes my ideal world feels like a fantasy. I look at all the systemic issues we face today, and the idea of resolving them all feels insurmountable. But I'm going to try anyway. I want a world without borders, where the quality of my life isn't capped by the color of my passport, if I can even afford one. I want us all to be free to pursue our interests, because our ability to have a good life isn't dependent on employment, where we work not to earn money, but to contribute to the healthy ecosystem that sustains us. I hope for a future where we don't downplay serious medical conditions because we can't afford treatment. I want a future so accessible that disabled people can have the greatest possible quality of life, where learning sign language is as much of a default as learning to speak, and wheelchair users don't have to share sidewalks with outdoor seating for restaurants. Imagine a world where indigenous people everywhere led the way when it came to sustainably sharing this planet, where corporations don't get away with setting the ocean on fire, where billionaires don't enter a space-based dick measuring contest while their employees earn barely enough to live on. Honestly, neither corporations nor billionaires have a place in my ideal future. There is no ethical way to earn that kind of money, much less to sit on it while others die because of problems your money can solve. I want a world where I can go jogging at night if I wanted to, without worrying about grass allergies or creepy men. Where little girls can go to school without worrying about inappropriate gestures from their teachers or their classmates. Where women everywhere are safe. We all deserve that much. I want a world where the idea of coming out is a journey of discovery, not something wrapped in fear or doubt. Where our views on gender and sexuality aren't so limited. Because why can't we add to all the wonder that already exists by breaking free of these ancient molds that limit self-expression? A world without misogyny, queerphobia, racism, and poverty. I waver between finding all this impossible and believing that we're not too far gone as a species to do better. But ultimately, I want better for all of us, and I'm willing to work for it even if it seems futile. That said, if this is all a waste, let me float away to a magical island with those I love. Let me find a safe space for all who need it and all who are committed to loving and protecting the most vulnerable of us.
When I think about the future, I think about the world as I would want to and hope to live in it. But because sometimes that feels so far away, I think about what it might look like for the next generation, for my younger cousins or siblings or sisters or children. And so when I combine those visions, I think of words. I think of what it means to feel a sense of freedom, that we're not as impacted or we're able to shift and destroy things like anti-blackness and misogynoir and homophobia and transphobia and classism, that our identities do not serve as barriers, but as beautiful points and intersections for us to live at, and not only a place where we experience our marginalization or oppression. I think of intergenerational healing and intergenerational wisdom, that we use the wisdom of our ancestors, of our parents, of our loved ones, of our elders, and placing it into every moment of our days and our times, that we reclaim that education and we reclaim that knowledge. I also think of unity and what it looks like for us to empathize and further understand the experiences of other people who may not always reflect our identities, but are deeply deserving of our love, our respect, of our care, of our tenderness. And so, although it sounds grandiose, I would want to destroy any system of oppression that exists that disconnects us from one another. When I think about the future, I think about people feeling whole, people feeling like they are their whole selves, that they are empowered, that they are able to move through the world as one. That sometimes we can, depending on the spaces that we're in, feel is so disconnected from who we truly are. And my hope for the future is that each of us realize our dreams for ourselves and live accordingly to that.
I love it. Wasn't that amazing? Thank you so much, Makafui and Amma, for sharing your visions. I want to know your visions as well. What do you think? Like, what is your vision of the future? What are your imaginations? It can be as specific as you want, or grandiose, or creative, whatever. I would love to know. Hashtag Asase Ba Pod to continue the conversation. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I'm super proud of this episode. I love it. So this was the last episode of season 3. I will be taking a break and I'll be back next year for season 4. Watch out for when transcripts will be added for the podcast. I'll probably make an announcement on social media. And also feel free to email asasebapod@gmail.com for any feedback, thoughts, etc. Yes, and you can follow Asase Ba on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok to keep updated on the podcast during the break. I did Tuesday talks earlier on in the spring where I talked about different topics that has to do with the theme of the show. Maybe I'll continue down the line. I don't know. We'll see, right? So you can follow at Asase Ba Pod on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Just in case I do something there as well. And I'll also, as usual, just be sharing things that align with the theme and the topics discussed on the podcast. So follow on there to keep updated. And thank you again so much for coming on this journey with me for season 3 as I shared more about myself and, my thoughts, dived into some research-based material, and also had amazing interviews. I'm always about growth and evolution and change and trying new things, experimenting, and not remaining stagnant. So I am looking forward to Asase Ba to continue growing and evolving and transforming as I continue to do the same, as our cultures and the world continue to do the same as well. So yeah, I am taking a break and I'm gonna just live life, experience, gain more wisdom, learn more, and just, we'll see what marinates. So I will see you next time. Bye.